All right, these are videos that are not so easy to make. These
Yeah.
are the ones that you could look at halfway through the season and you could see the comments. Well, this aged well, right?
That's a classic. I
Yeah.
completely forgot about that.
But we are telling you players that we are avoiding in fantasy football this year, in redraft fantasy football this year. Okay. And we're going to give you reasons why. Again, these are harder videos to make. So bear with us as we explain as to why some of your favorite players we might not be drafting. I'm going to tell you about my first avoid, and that is James Conner. All right.
Brother
His current
James.
ADP, he really fluctuates. I mean, sometimes he's a top 10, he's 12, right now around 13 to 15 is the ADP. He is my running back 16. So it is kind of hard to really say this is technically an avoid based on my rankings, but I'm never looking to really draft James Conner when he's on the board. I always prefer other
Yeah.
options,
You look for
including
somebody
running backs,
else.
including wide receivers, including guys like Mark Andrews at the tight end position. And let me firstly say, I absolutely will acknowledge that I understand James Conner can be a top 12 running back again this year. I understand that that is a possibility. I just want to state my concerns as to why I might be avoiding him. Number one, I talked about it, but I like the other players that are on the board. I typically always like the other players. I looked at our last two community mock drafts and where James Conner went, and I always preferred the other guys on the board. Guys like Keenan Allen, AJ Brown, Mark
Yeah.
Andrews, T. Higgins,
Mhm.
Aaron Jones, Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs. A lot of people won't like that one, but that's okay. Um, typically these picks are happening around the end of round 2, beginning of round 3 in a 12-team, one quarterback redraft league. And I prefer all those guys that I just listed over James Conner. And I talked about this last year in the season, but James Conner was extremely inefficient last year. It wasn't good. I mean, if you look at his yards per carry, it was pretty rough. He was a running back 5. He had 18 touchdowns. But is there regression coming? Last year, if you look at yards per carry, he was 46th amongst running backs. If you look at true yards per carry provided by Player Profiler, he was 62nd in the NFL. And true yards per carry puts a premium on consistency. So 62nd in true yards per carry, that is rough. Think about how many other players were more efficient in that area. Yards per touch, he was 27th, which is, that's not terrible, but that's not a top 12 running back efficient, right? Breakaway run rate was 26th. And if you look at fantasy points per game versus expected fantasy points per game, you look at fantasy points per game, 7th. Expected fantasy points per game, 17th. That just screams regression, potential regression on the way.
Right.
And I took time out and I took a lot of time researching this, but I wanted to look at the top 12 last year. And I wanted to see what percentage of those players' fantasy points came from touchdowns. Okay. So probably see it on your screen now. Big list here. All right. You can see outside of James Conner, Austin Eckler was the highest at 34%, Mixon at 33%. But you got guys like Fournette, who is only 23% of his points. Alvin Kamara, only 23% of his points. The average for these top 12 running backs outside of Conner is 27%. And then you have James Conner there at the bottom, who 42% of his fantasy points came from touchdowns.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
We saw something happen last year where normally Kyler is running it in for a touchdown, but more times than often, it just happened to be James Conner, who was the one on the goal line who got those opportunities this year. And you saw Kyler's rushing touchdowns come down. His gameplay didn't change, but his rushing touchdowns came down and Conner's went up. So what happens if he loses half of his touchdowns? 18 touchdowns is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. There's no way he hits that number again. But what if he had 9 touchdowns last year? Well, if he had 9 touchdowns last year, he would have finished as the running back 18, right? So it's not to say that he's not going to be valuable. He's going to be a consistent player, but what if he doesn't thrive in the touchdown category this year? because then his value might significantly decrease if he loses out some of those touchdowns. And if you look at the receiving game, by the way, they just signed Darrell Williams, who was top 12 in targets last year for Kansas City. So I think he very much will have a role here in Arizona. I think he fits what they need in that category, because the last thing I want to talk about is James Conner's injury history. If you look at his injury history, it's quite large. And last year, he was healthy pretty much until he became the guy. Him and Chase Edmonds split the workload pretty much right down the middle. And that was great for James Conner because he was able to be efficient, score touchdowns, and stay healthy. He became the guy after Edmonds got injured in week 9. But just 5 games after that, he himself got injured after handling that full workload. We're talking about a guy in James Conner who has missed 22 games, who has either missed or not finished 22 games since 2018 due to injury. This is not a player who is known to have an entire season of, no injuries, of staying healthy. So again, let me be honest. I am aware that there could be comments on this video in December. Man, this aged poorly. Wow. Aged like milk. But I'm personally avoiding him, and I'm okay to face the consequences if I am wrong. I just like the other players that are on the board at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. One thing I always like to say about James Conner was like when he actually got the full workload, I forgot right after Chase Edmonds got injured, he got the full workload. And I think the second game he got injured.
It was five games after.
Yeah, he missed time. And I was like, dang, well, that's what happens when he gets the full workload. So that's the concern. If he follows on that path, then it's going to be a problem.
And by the way, I understand that he just signed in free agency and everything, but that wasn't an expensive deal. It's not, he's going to be the guy, but I just don't know. The efficiency, again, is what worries me. So,
yeah. All right. My first avoid player, my only avoid player for you guys is a DK Metcalf. And this tough one, it may be tough. Maybe you guys would like it. Maybe you guys don't. Current ADP wide receiver 19. He's my wide receiver 22 currently in my rankings. And the reason being is who the hell is going to be his quarterback?
Right.
My personal belief, everything that I've been reading and researching is that Drew Lock is going to be the guy. Okay. And it does not feel good if he is the starting quarterback, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf is a beast. But when you really break it down, I was looking, okay, can Drew Luck really sustain DK? What can DK do? What did he do in the past with Russell? DK got most of his work in the deep deep ball passes, okay? Mm-hmm. And Drew Luck is not that guy. Yeah. And I went to look into it in 2020 where Luck started 13 games. He was dead last in deep ball completions, completing just 27% of 20 yards or more. That was QB 34. That was that's not even every team, my guy. He was worse than every single team plus two other backups.
There's a backup. Yeah, exactly. That's insane to think about. There's a backup better at deep ball completion percentage.
That's not what you want, especially with a guy like DK, who if you're drafting, you're getting in the third or fourth round, depending on how you want to go there. Okay, and when you lose Russell Wilson to get Drew Luck, you are going to struggle. All right. So when you look into it, and I was looking into it, I was like, all right, can he get other work somewhere else? Well, is something else is going to happen? And I was like, maybe he'll get hyper targeted. But one thing I was looking into was that Pete Carroll, when they drafted Ken Walker and Charles Cross, a top 10 guy, by the way, and Kenneth Walker was a second round pick. Yeah. Pete Carroll says he wants to run the ball. We need to get back to our roots. We need to start pounding the rock. And that's what, in my opinion, was going to happen. In 2019, granted, that was DK's rookie year. He only had 100 targets, wide receiver 33. Locke had 110. Tyler Lockett had 110 targets, wide receiver 13. But in that year, that was Chris Carson's best year. When he played almost all games, he missed one game. He finished RB12, averaging 18 carries, 4.4 yards per carry. That's what concerns me. Kenneth Walker, I think we can probably say right now, feels like a more talented than Chris Carson, more healthier for sure. Chris Carson,
yeah,
and a guy that feels like he's going to be on the field for the whole season.
Mhm.
And if the whole problem with Chris Carson was that he couldn't stay healthy, and then it went to Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny couldn't stay healthy. And then you got all these other backups, Alex Collins, and it went down the list. No one can stay healthy. If Ken Walker, can stay healthy, I mean, you're going to see the targets, in my opinion, the targets decrease and just less efficiency from DK Metcalf. And I know one last thing people are going to say, well, there's technically two people there. What if Geno Smith is there? My guy started 9 games in 3 years. I don't think he should be the starter, in my opinion. What if they get Baker Mayfield? Is that really going to be any better? Maybe it will be his true ADP then, but he's not rising up ADP. He's not rising up my rankings. So for me, I'm just completely avoiding DK. I love the talent, and I'm believing in next year, especially in the redraft perspective or dynasty perspective, that they're going to draft a quarterback for DK in the future, or maybe they just trade DK. There was talks. Yeah. There was talk. So I just want to say one more thing. DK went in our last mock draft at the 410. These are people that went before him or after him, right? Okay. Just in that realm. George Kittle, Jerry Jeudy, Hollywood Brown, Allen Robinson, Cortland Sutton, Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams. You can even do Kyle Pitts if you really wanted to. Travis Etienne. Right. I am taking every single one of those guys over DK Metcalf based on situation and what I believe they're going to be in this next coming year. So for me, I'm once again just completely avoiding DK Metcalf at all. I mean, completely.
And by the way, just to like extend your take a little bit and like, because I kind of agree with this one. I love DK in Dynasty, and I'm not afraid to draft him in 3rd round of startups because of the talent long term. But not only Ken Walker, but Rashad Penny is going to be a big part of this backfield.
He's there.
They have 2 running backs that I think they can give 15 touches a game to each, and pretty much build this team around the run. And I think Pete Carroll was most proud of his teams when they had an elite defense and a good run game. I think that's what he cares about. And there was always that tension with Russ. So yeah, let's see what happens with DK. Really love the talent. Can he outshine? I don't know.
Tough.
Let's find out.
It's toughy.
But let us know who are the players you are avoiding. Now, to be very clear, I don't think that we are not going to draft these players at all if the ADP is right. For example, like if James Conner, right now I have him as my RB16. If he's on the board in the 4th round, yeah, I'll take the shot on him. But I think the bigger point of the video was ADP based off the players that are available, where they're going. We think both of these players might be higher in ADP later on. So at this point, we would consider them avoids. So comment down below. Let us know what your avoids are in fantasy drafts this year.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLandFam.